Hi, everyone. A very good morning to you, and welcome to this My Journey series chat with Winifred Loh. My name is Keith, as very ably announced by Errol earlier, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to facilitate today's conversation. But really, actually, today it's not about me at all. Today we're spotlighting Winifred Loh. Okay, let's start with share a little bit about yourself, Winifred.
Okay, so maybe I like to start with, of course, the person who has been most instrumental in my life, and that's as you can see is my husband. All right, he's been my life partner for many years. In fact, we met when I was 17 and he was 21, and so we've been together for ever so long. I won't reveal all that because it will date me, but clearly, as you can see from the series of pictures there, that we've grown up with each other through many phases in life, one could say. And I always tell people that he has been my compass, yeah. And at the same time, my joke is that I married the same man twice, yeah. I didn't learn my lesson. I had to marry him again. All right. The first time, you never know what you sign up for. The second time was much more meaningful, not only because I knew what I signed up for, plus it was actually in Cana in Israel. So that really sealed our marriage. And he's been always supportive of all the various crazy things I've been up to, both at work as well as in the community. And yeah, I just like to make sure, I recognize that he is a very significant part of who I am.
Okay, but at the very start of your career, where you were, I think, primarily in HR and organization development, what were your career goals at that time? Where did you see yourself going?
Actually, I graduated in the 80s, right? And so with an arts degree. So for some, they might be a bit worried, right? Because it's so general. But actually, I always said that, with that kind of background, I could either do everything or do nothing. And I chose to do everything. Yeah. And I started in retail, as you can see, some brands that you might be familiar with, Mothercare and Body Shop. Yeah. And actually cut my teeth there in training and development, and actually found a career that I loved. I didn't plan to, all right, because I didn't study HR or training and development in my general arts degree. And but I think I enjoyed what I did and continued, and pursued, further education, and more interesting work experiences. So I was at Coopers and Lybrand, and those of you who are from there will know that that dates me as well, because now it's PricewaterhouseCoopers. Yeah, and then I was also in Zenger Miller, which is really a training solutions provider. But I think when my career really started was when I joined Apple. This was before Steve Jobs returned. All right, so but it was a very interesting time, and there I ventured into HR and also enjoyed it. Yeah, I learned a lot, but I also went back to training and development when I joined Intel and stayed for 7 years and really grew the most as a professional at Intel. But as you can see, up to that point, all my jobs were mostly with American or British MNCs. I felt that it was time to do national service already, so I joined Singtel, yeah, as a telco. Again, a very different type of business, and stayed for 6 years. And ended up, being a group head for talent management as well at the Singtel Group, and also was a learning and OD director for Singapore. But I felt, in a way, my plan at some point was to step out of corporate. All right. And I felt that the last position I needed to be in to position myself well for future opportunities was to go back into HR. And that's what I did. So I went into Covance, which is really a part of the pharmaceutical sector. So it was really an opportunity to return to the HR generalist field and actually be at a very senior level, overseeing countries in Asia Pacific as well as Central Eastern Europe. But after 2.5 years there of being on the plane, because the organization is based in New Jersey in the US, and managing these two other huge regions, I was on the call like 24 hours a day. So it was not possible to really continue for very long unless I make a choice to relocate. So I decided at that point, and as part of my plan, to then have a little more flexibility in my time, so that I can actually turn things around. Because throughout that time in my career, it's about 27 years in corporate life, was, I volunteered a lot, but it was about 20% of my time, and 80% of my time was spent on building my career and doing very interesting professional work. So I made a choice in 2012 to flip that around and actually spend 80% of my time to do volunteer work and only 20% paid work. So that was part of the plan. And so it just took me 20 over years to get there. Yeah, but I'm so glad I did, because it was really at a half time in life when you have enough experience and you have enough, more than enough resources to be able to make that choice. And I am very fortunate to be in a position where I can make that choice. I live very simply, I don't need much. So I said, okay, let's give it a try. And since then, more doors have opened for me than I ever imagined. So as you can see, some of the organizations that I've volunteered with, these are just a sample, that some people might recognize. I was always a life member of AWARE, Association of Women for Action and Research, and ended up, in 2012 being recalled back to lead the organization forward. And this was very interesting because it allowed me to also practice my profession within AWARE. But beyond that, I've also volunteered with the Singapore International Foundation. So they've sent me to many places, including Japan, Philippines, and so forth, to do work on their projects, which is as a volunteer. And of course, I happen to love film. As those of you who know me, and the fact that I'm involved with Cana Film Festival, obviously I love film, and that again reveals my arts background. Even though somehow I got kind of like focused on corporate career, I still kept the love for the arts really very close to my heart. And so I am sitting on the board of the Singapore International Film Festival right now. And in 2014, remember I said I flipped that around. That's when I started the Cana Film Festival, which we'll talk about later. And obviously that is within the Catholic environment. So to me, the experience of being involved with films and film festivals worldwide gave me the courage to actually start something for the Catholic community. And in this phase in life, I've been very fortunate to be able to, bring both threads of the for-profit and the non-profit world together, and landed somehow at the Center for Nonprofit Leadership. I didn't know such an organization existed, but thanks to Lawrence Lien, who was the CEO of NVPC at that time, who actually started CNPL, all right? And he's one of those who was responsible for recruiting me into the Center for Nonprofit Leadership, where I could actually merge, again, my professional skills in organizational development, talent management, and so forth, in the nonprofit sector and get paid. But of course, at a fraction of the of the salary that I used to earn. But that's okay, because it provided a lot of meaning and opportunities for me to engage with the nonprofits. So since then in this phase in my life since the last few years, since I left CNPL in 2017 and decided to go independent, fully independent. So now, you know, you look at some of the organizations I partner with, some are international. Errol, can you show the next slide? Yeah, some are international and some are very local. So again, this gives me a lot of satisfaction because I can continue to build on, leverage on my past corporate experiences, but at the same time share some of my insights and experiences with the nonprofit sector. So I am involved with SSI as well as with SMU through their executive leadership program for the community care agencies. So there are many things I get involved with, and the most recent development is my being engaged with the Civil Service College. So again, this allows me to then touch the public sector and share experiences and key learnings from both the for-profit and non-profit world for public servants. So that, in a nutshell, is really how I've designed my life. Sometimes it was planned, most times it wasn't. Yeah, but it's just in response to opportunities and encounters with people that happen in life. And I said yes too often. And that always I said was a developmental area for me, is to learn how to say no. But I don't regret many of them. In fact, I really embrace all of them because they've really enriched my life.
Sort of big question that's on my mind now, especially is that switch from the profit sector to non-profit sector. You know, so reversing this 80-20 thing that you mentioned about. That seems to be a pretty big decision that came, I think, perhaps somewhere midway in your career. How did you come to this decision? Was this something you naturally stumbled upon? You know, the door just sort of opened, or was it something that you felt within that, hey, perhaps it's time for me to do something different? What was this discernment and decision making process like?
Right. Yeah, I think towards the latter half of my career. Certainly, and I'm sure I've spoken to many people, because I'm also an executive coach, right? So I work with people who are trying to figure out, the next part of their life, right? Because, and with the current economic situation, sometimes you have no choice. But I was very fortunate. I made that choice, and certainly, it wasn't an easy one, so I took time to prepare, because as we all know, when you have a lot, you've achieved a lot, it's harder to let go. All right, and it took me a couple of years, and time with the spiritual director, to discern what's really important, for me, and I came to that conclusion that although the material things in life are important, they're not that important in living a full life. Yeah, and as I always like to say, I don't need a Starbucks. Kopi O also can, kosong. Yeah. So I just find it very difficult to pay $6 for a Starbucks coffee. But anyway, so from that point of view, it's very natural for me to downshift. So it wasn't difficult. All right. But at the same time, knowing the cultures of for-profit and non-profit are very different.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that as your career progressed, as you developed more skill sets and experiences, you over time also, it was a conscious effort to want to stretch yourself, and then it came to a point in your career where you felt like, hey, I have these skills, these experiences, I want to use it for really the greater good of society, in the non-profit sector, and not so much just for, I suppose, very successful, profitable organizations to thrive, but also to have some sort of impact on society. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, because I actually do feel that for many non-profit organizations, because they have less resources, they have less access to some of the best practices that many corporates have. And because I was in a position where I could share some of those resources, I wanted to be the channel to provide some of those resources. So at CNPL particularly, it is really a consulting group for the nonprofits and especially for boards and committees. So again, it fit me perfectly in terms of the skills I bring and the experiences in the nonprofit sector. So that's why, it was almost like part of God's plan, not mine, that it came together in CNPL. And then from CNPL, again, I got to know so many other nonprofit organizations that now even I'm able to tap on that. And that's why, SSI and SMU, among others, have continued to engage me to facilitate, webinars and workshops with nonprofit organizations.
But what about perhaps corporate leaders who might be tuning in now, watching this webinar? So our very own Catholic corporate leaders who are trying, to lead their organizations. What advice can you give to them as they navigate these uncertain times?
As Catholic leaders in the business environment or in the marketplace, those 4 principles continue to hold true. I don't think, leadership will change just because of the crisis that we are going through. But in fact, you need to go back to the basics. To me, the 4 principles are really very, very core. Yeah. One is about self-awareness. So knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, what you value, yeah, and your worldview. And for me, being a cradle Catholic, I can't help but think and act and believe as a Catholic. So you do need to know who you are. Yeah, you don't have to preach all the time. Actually, you preach through your actions. Yeah. Second is the ingenuity, which I think is wonderful because actually, and I didn't realize until I read his book and heard from him, right, that you need to confidently innovate and adapt to embrace a changing world. You can't stay still. All right. So this is just another iteration, of changes that is going on during this COVID-19 pandemic. So how are we going to be creative and innovative in responding to the current situation? And the third one is about love. All right. And so it's about engaging others with a positive, loving attitude, not to condemn, not to judge, not to jump to conclusions, but to be open to asking questions and listening, to people. And the fourth is actually about heroism itself. Although that word sometimes can be confusing to people, but actually what it means is just being energetic and energizing others as well to constantly achieve more, to have grander ambitions, that you don't just sit and wait for things to fall on your lap, but actually to take action and to be heroic from that standpoint.
Okay, I'm going to turn our attention now to a question. This comes by way of John Uy, who emailed CBN just yesterday, actually. Miss Winifred was formerly president of AWARE, which comes across as having positions on issues that may not always be aligned to Catholic teaching. If this is a correct understanding and there are differences in the organization's position vis-a-vis Catholic teaching, for example, on abortion and sexuality education, how did Winifred try to reconcile the two positions as a key leader of the organization? So here, I think in summary, it was you living out your faith as president of AWARE. How did you reconcile those ethical sort of concerns?
Sure. I've been asked this question before, and just for everyone's information as well, there are many Catholics in AWARE, all right, as staff, as well as on the board and on many of the committees. And I think that is a good thing, because then we are there to also live out our faith, be leaders in organizations in causes that we believe in. But as a Catholic, my response is that being Catholic is about free will, yeah? And I will not impose my views nor judge a person's decision, especially on difficult ethical dilemmas, yeah? I believe my role as a Catholic and my role as an aware leader is really to educate and provide the individual as much help and resources to make a fully informed choice, yeah, and not to prescribe for them my choice, right? So I can only pray that the Holy Spirit will guide that person to make that choice in line with Catholic social teachings. Because at the end of the day, they have to own their decision.
Thanks for that question as well, John Uy. We've also got a couple of questions from Trillian So as well as CJ. So
Sure.
share with us a little bit about your journey of faith. How would you say it's been over the years for you?
Okay. In a way, my faith journey also was evident in the projects I said yes to. I think this is related to Trillian's question as well. Yeah, and I have a problem that I don't know how to say no often enough. Yeah, and I always say I have a preferential treatment for Catholic or faith-based organizations. Yeah, but of course Catholic will come up as first priority. So yeah, I've led board retreats for several, including IJHCC and even the St. Vincent de Paul. Yeah, and of course on the right hand side you can see with Jesuit refugee services as well. I've led some of their board retreats and including CBN. I am also a lay Pauline cooperator. Yeah, and I have to thank the several spiritual directors on my journey. First was Sister Grace. And so again, I never knew there was such a ministry, and congregation, like the FSPs or the Daughters of St. Paul. All right. And then when I realized that, wow, I could overlay my faith and my interest in social communication together, it just was the right place for me to be. For those of you who are not so familiar with the Pauline charism, what is it that we are all about? It is really a gift that was given to our founder, Blessed James Alberoni, just over 100 years ago, yeah, for the church, and thousands of men and women have followed him in the congregations, institutes, and lay associations he founded in the 20th century, known as the Pauline Family. There are actually 10 different institutes and bodies. And only in Singapore, we only have 2, and that is the FSP, the Daughters of St. Paul, and ourselves, the Pauline Cooperator. And what makes us unique is this emphasis on totality, internality, living Christ, and communicating Christ to the world in the field of communications in the spirit of St. Paul. So what I really found very resonant was the fact that first, it's built on St. Paul as a missionary, someone with a lot of zeal who is actually out there all the time. Yeah. And actually, Blessed James Alberoni, if you find out more about him, I always say he is a very small, very dynamic priest, but my goodness, he ran the shop like a CEO, all right? And I love it because he got a lot of things done. So for me, it is about being out there, and making things happen, yeah? So for Pauline Cooperators, we are therefore called to carry out the Pauline mission in all its forms, such as writing and diffusion of the gospel through media, all right? And as a cooperator, we are called to cooperate in the mission through prayer, works, and offerings. So for me then, in the beginning, I had no clue what I would do, all right? But somehow, it's been more than 15 years since I made my promise as a Pauline cooperator. I discovered quite by accident that, there were priests and nuns who just focus on film. So I loved it, all right? So if you turn to the next slide, this is the Cana Film Festival. It's actually a very important part of my faith and film journey, all right, to actually live out my faith in creating something that can bring more people in, all right, to appreciate our Catholic social teachings using film. So that's our intention, to showcase independent films that espouse the universality of CSTs. What makes us distinctive is actually the picture on the top right, is that we always have a panel discussion, after every film. And you'll see there's a Franciscan there. We always invite a religious, and we always invite, one or two people that are related to the cause in the film. In this one, it was a film that Keith selected, and it's called Love and Bananas. So it's a documentary. So we don't do mainstream film. We only do, independent film, and many of them are documentaries as well. All right, as well as features. They are independent, so not the blockbuster. And so we always invite a few of the people who are involved in that sector or the cause. And in this case, it was about the elephant. All right, and so we had the gentleman in the middle from Nature Society, and the gentleman on the right is from SPCA. All right, so to me, this is an opportunity to share with Catholics and others who come for our screenings, to have a conversation about ecology, about environment, about animals, and so forth. So let me pause here and then see whether Keith would like to add anything about his time with us at CFF3.
Films helped me to pray. Okay, so many years ago, I would say actually my conversion story happened because of a certain show called Touched by an Angel. I was at a really low point of my life, and I watched that show like every day for 2 months straight, and I would cry and cry because I found it so moving. Angels would appear and tell people you are loved by God and all of that. And I realized then, I come from a media background, so that was a key moment where I realized, wow, God can really speak to me through the power of television and film, And I think if we really think about it, back in the day of Jesus, he was a storyteller. He told parables and all that, and those were the tools he had. These days, we have modern technologies, but we are still in the business of telling stories. Stories that can help to inspire people, and ultimately, with CFF, especially with the conversation that happens after the film, it lets people think and pray and reflect on certain issues, and hopefully make certain changes in their lives, so that they can ultimately be able to love people and community much better. So that was what I found so rewarding about this Cana Film Festival. That I have one question here that comes by way of CJ. This individual asks, what makes you enjoy contributing back to society? So you do all of these different things. What is it that makes you enjoy it so much?
I do believe in these two statements, that work represents a fundamental dimension of human existence as participation, not only in the act of creation, but also in that of redemption. So, and you can read it, faster than I can. But what I like about the second quote also is that our Lord really wants us to be holy in the place where we are. And it so happens I'm placed in the workplace. So in the job that you have chosen for whatever reason. So which means how well you do your job, you are actually demonstrating spirituality. Okay, so not many people would think that way, but somehow I actually didn't come to work, when I first started thinking that way. But over the years, I've realized that I've lived out my being a Catholic through work. All right. And so I am very passionate and proud of the work that I can do and making sure that I do it well. So I love the last line is, what use is it of telling me that so-and-so person is a good Catholic or Christian, but a bad shoemaker? So it's the output, all right? What you do in your work that shows whether you are Catholic enough. Because if you are, you would do your best, yeah, and make it, share your gifts in that product or your solution, yeah. And so, so that's why, it's addictive, to CJ's question.
But how would you say perhaps you are sanctified through it and you sanctify others through it?
Wow, I don't think I'll ever get there. Yeah, but I think a work gives me an opportunity to continue the pursuit of sanctification.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. Many are coming in. I think we may only have time for one or two more, so I'll try to distill them together.
Sure.
Top of the list, also because it's got an upvote, is from Sylvia. Thanks very much, Sylvia. Sylvia also commented earlier on in the chat. Thank you very much for your contribution, Sylvia. Okay, but her question is the usual quotation, render to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. So how do we reconcile that quotation at work if we are asked to do something that is contrary to our faith by our bosses at work? So how can we have this integrity in our Catholic faith, but at work?
Yeah. So that's why I think this brings up the verse that I also live by, which is salt of the earth and light of the world. So that means salt of the earth is really about, in fact, both are about discipleship. And at workplace, it's really knowing who you are. That's salt. Salt. That means you have to be salty, and I am very salty. In the real meaning of the term is that I will speak up and push back. All right, and those are skills that you need to learn. Plus, also you need to. It's a bit of personality. It's a bit of skills. It's a bit of everything. All right, your EQ comes into it. But when confronted with issues that don't resonate or where it doesn't align with your values, you do need to speak up, and that's knowing who you are, your what you stand for. And then light of the world is same. It's the light is meant to shine, right? Yeah, it's to influence. Really about influencing people at work, all right, or wherever you are. Work, as I said, can be in for-profit, non-profit, in community organizations. So you need to be the light, all right? So you, if you see that things are in conflict with what the organization stands for or what the team stands for, you do need to step up and be able to influence the powers that be. Don't just sit back. So you do need to go forward. Yeah. So that's how I see it.
Okay, I think I just have time for just one last final question. Let's see how I can squeeze this in.
Let's see.
There's a combination of Trillian's and Charles Lim's questions, which is the challenges you face in bringing faith to the workplace. So what are the challenges you have faced as a Catholic in a secular workplace, whether profit, non-profit, and how did you overcome them?
Okay. Yeah, maybe I start somewhat by describing what's similar and not similar or different, right? I think in for-profit organizations, I think you get, people are very focused on results at the expense of, in some organizations, their faith, all right, and the people around them. So it's your means to an end, yeah. Whereas I think in for-profit organizations, it's all about passion and compassion, yeah. And it is a great difference when you navigate both. You can see that the intentions are much purer in non-profit. But at the same time, having functioned in both, I can also hand to heart tell you that it's not all about nobility in non-profit organizations. It's not. Yeah, I always say that your faith needs to be very strong if you want to work in a faith-based organization. Yeah, because actually the challenges are multiplied. Yeah, partly because of the faith, partly because there are less resources. Yeah, so you do need to address both. Yeah, but one other wonderful characteristic that is different, obviously in non-profit, is you work with volunteers as well. All right, and actually they bring so much to the table, but at the same time, as a worker or as a staff, you do need to know how to work with volunteers. Yeah, and so I think it all boils down, if you want to be effective either in for-profit or non-profit, regardless, is really your emotional intelligence.
Okay. And I think with that, it's I suppose if I could just add a couple of words, perhaps it's also, I mean, it's not easy to witness to our faith in any environment,
Yes.
let alone our own homes. It's not easy to do it.
Yeah, not at all.
And in the workplace, it's not easy also. But I think it's always remembering that, yes, indeed, Christ is with us wherever we go and whatever we do. And we strive to sanctify our work. You talked about the spirituality of work earlier on. So bringing Christ there, having the mind of Christ, and I suppose not forcing our own agenda onto people or our own faith onto people, but to act and to love as Christ loves, regardless of the faith of the other. Okay, so with that, thank you so much, Winifred. Lots of questions, many difficult ones. Thank you all also for your wonderful, wonderful questions. So I'd like to hand over the time to Errol, who will round us off today.
Catholic Business Network is not a funded organization. We have to rely on our own funds. So request you to make any love offerings if you can to help fund our programs and continue to bring these digital programs to you. So if you have bank transfers, you can make a check, or if you open your banking app, you can scan the QR code with the UEN number for Pay Now. And if you have any feedback, please email to admin@cbn.fsg. So I thank you again for all your participation. I'm going to leave the screen for a while, and have a good weekend, and God bless you all.